I'm David Velasco. I'm the editor-in-chief of Artforum, and I'm here today speaking with Coco Fusco, who is the artist on the cover of our summer issue. So thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
The work is so perfect for the cover. I mean, it's just a beautiful image, this carnation floating on a Long Island Sound. But it's also, it's the work itself, the video that you have in the Whitney Biennial, which is it's called "Your Eyes Will Be an Empty Word." It's definitely one of the strongest works in the show, and in the two reviews that we had in the issue, one by Jace Clayton and one by Hilton, they both draw a lot of attention to it. It's kind of a lodestar for them. So I wanted to hear, I guess, first of all, like how you came up with this work, like where it came from for you.
Well, thanks for putting me on the cover. I've been in 3 Whitney Biennials, the infamous 1993, 2008, and now this one. I was surprised that people responded so strongly to the work. It is a very simple piece that I made in the first months of the pandemic in 2020. I had started doing image research on how artists in different centuries had depicted fatal diseases, epidemics, plagues. And every day as an exercise, I would post one image of an artwork and then to talk about it. And a lot of friends responded, and art historians started sending me things. And I started, it was like I was making almost like an independent study for myself. And I started noticing patterns in the way that death was personified. And I also, it's this sort of spirit figure rising above the earth. And also I noticed the parallels that people like in the Decameron, the rich leave and go lock themselves away, and my wealthy friends were doing the same thing. And the indigent and the poor and convicts were the ones lifting the cadavers during the plagues, and now you have people who are in prison who are burying COVID victims in different parts of the country for either no money or some pittance an hour. So I saw the connections, and I was really struck by that. And I think that's what kind of got me going. And then at some point, I saw a news story about Hart Island, that the mass grave was being reopened. I think the last time the mass grave was used was during the AIDS crisis. There are people that continue to be buried there, but it's another thing when you open the mass grave and you start putting in large numbers of dead bodies at the same time. And I also noticed that, prisoners from Rikers were the ones who were doing this. And so I was like, I think I should try to do something there. And I started to try to figure out how to get to Hart Island. And I had this, in Latin America and in Spain, there is a Catholic tradition that as a memorial to dead, you throw flowers into the sea, right? And in Cuba, they do this, ceremony like to commemorate the death of Che Guevara and all this stuff. But, usually it's a more private thing where you go and put flowers in the sea. So I had this idea that I could do that, right? That even if I couldn't get onto the island, because there are all these do not trespass signs there, and I knew that if I tried to apply for permission as a journalist or something like that, that I'd be waiting forever. I was like, let's just wing it. And a friend of a friend had the drone camera because I knew that I wouldn't be able to get on land. So the way to shoot was to use the drone, but also the drone gave me the possibility of looking from above, which is the point of view of death from these other artworks. Yeah. So I had, a lot of thinking thinking about the experiences that so many people were going through, and knowing also that the people who would have been buried at Hart Island were people whose bodies were not claimed within the 48-hour window that you have in New York, right? And so who would that be? Well, the homeless people, right? Or people in prison who don't have relatives that can want to or have the funds to have a burial, or undocumented workers who were, a lot of the delivery people and all these people who were out there in the subways, in public transport, and getting sick, right? If their families were notified, there was no way that they were going to be able to get to New York in 2 days to claim the bodies.
No, I mean, it's incredible that you draw attention to this, to the people who were considered ungrievable, the ones who were most exposed. And you've made, a beautiful artwork that actually, it at least like gives us, it's an elegy for them and for that moment.
They were herded through life as numbers, case numbers, file numbers, chart numbers, registration numbers, convict numbers, patient numbers. They are interred by men who also became numbers. They end on a small island where the numbers rise, but the counting stops. A mountain of unclaimed souls, perhaps 1 million, perhaps more, or perhaps less. No one actually knows.
There's also something funny, which is that it's an elegy, but there's something so buoyant about the video too. Like, you're in the boat and you're actually smiling too. Like, there's something very, it's a sunny day, it's beautiful. The actual landscape has this real bucolic beauty, even if it's also kind of run down. Yeah, that the contrast of this incredibly, difficult subject matter and this deep mourning, and I want to say, like, your also a light touch that you have with it is also gives it a certain kind of profundity.
Well, the island itself is really heavy, right? And it's like the ghosts are very present in that place, because that so-called ugly side of the island, which is where you can see, the building marked prison and the other buildings. I mean, the history of the island has been a dumping ground for every class of human being that the larger society has wanted to reject, right? So over, since the middle of the 19th century, it's been a place where quote unquote colored soldiers in the Union Army were put. And then it was like, juvenile delinquents and spillover from different prisons and sanatoriums that were too full in Roosevelt Island. They put the extra population there. And, it was like people who were diseased, people who were considered criminal, people who were unwanted have been housed there in one way or another. I think the last iteration of this was drug rehab in the late 60s and early 70s, and then it shut down. But all the buildings are there and they're decaying. I mean, part of the reason why the Department of Corrections didn't want to let people in was because of the state of the buildings there. It's dangerous to go in there. There's trees growing out of them. The ceilings are falling down. Everything is really a mess. And there's another part of it, which I can't really communicate in the video because the olfactory is not possibly transmitted there, but there is an odor in that place. And I think, I can't say for sure, but I think besides the fact that there's probably a lot of garbage and the water is not very clean, it's a very small island. It's like a mile long, and supposedly over 1 million people have been buried there. It is a mountain of disintegrated human beings. I think there's probably more human beings, there, human remains than Earth. And so it's very interesting to me that there's green, there's grass, there's trees coming out of that earth. But I think that earth is very much mixed with human beings. I think it was during Hurricane Sandy, there were reports that some remains were floating into the water. So around some of the island, there's like a kind of boulder formation that you could tell that those rocks were not originally there. And I think it's to hold everything in. So it's a very strange place. Very strange place. And the markers are, some of them have fallen. Then there's that little kind of memorial thing that I start the video with, which is also kind of decrepit now. Everything is sort of falling apart, and that gives it a very that's heavy enough. If you visit cemeteries that are private, and you see how people tend to the graves of their deceased loved ones, and it's so different. This is so abandoned. And so the visual metaphor for rejection is strong enough. There's not much more that I have to do other than to just show this. And the ritual of putting flowers in the sea is a very loving thing. It is not, I didn't feel like I had to cry. Also, I'm doing this for my friend who died, right? For Maria Teresa. So, and thinking of her, and I, even though I'm sad that she's gone and I miss her, I also know that, if she were there, she would have been very happy to see what I was doing. So, I was like, just, yes, I don't know if I was like joyful, but I was happy to be out and making something, certainly, and pleased that we were able to get it to work.
When death comes, it will have your eyes. This death that is always with us, from morning till evening, sleepless, deaf like an old remorse or some senseless bad habit. Your eyes will be an empty word, a stifled cry, a silence. The way they appear to you each morning when you lean into yourself alone in the mirror, sweet hope, that day we too shall know that you are life and you are nothingness. For each of us, death has a face. When death comes, it will have your eyes. It will be like quitting some bad habit, like seeing a dead face resurface out of the mirror, like listening to shut lips. We'll go down into the vortex in silence.